everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Practical Law. My name is Attorney Troy Tyson. I'm an attorney practicing in the state of Indiana. And of course, as always, anything I say here today is not going to be intended to be legal advice, nor is it intended to create any type of attorney-client relationship. I want to talk today about a question that comes up pretty frequently in my practice, and that is, I live in an apartment or I live in a house that I'm renting. My landlord simply is not doing anything to fix the many problems that we're having. And that can come in a variety of forms. Maybe you have mold, maybe you have pests, maybe your HVAC isn't working and, not working at the worst time, like in summer or in winter. Maybe you were promised some things in the lease and they weren't there, or they weren't, up to par when you actually moved in. These are a variety of situations that can come up, and very often do come up when you have apartment or house rental situations. So this is an instance and a subject that varies somewhat state by state. And so, as I said, I practice in the state of Indiana, and it's easy on certain issues to give general information about how the courts work, how the procedures work, general legal understanding of certain things. This is a case where these laws vary pretty significantly state by state. And so the general principles at play here are a couple of things. First of all, landlords in most or all states are going to have certain obligations to provide a tenant with certain things, whether that's safe housing, habitable dwelling, functioning systems such as HVAC, plumbing, things like that. So landlords typically just have baseline obligations that they have to provide to tenants who are paying them rent to rent a space. That's the first thing. And that most of the problems that come up fall under just that general obligation. There's a second issue, though, which is called constructive eviction. And that's a concept where if things get so bad, if the landlord simply is not fulfilling his obligations and you can't even live in an environment anymore, that's a concept known as constructive eviction, where the landlord is essentially evicting you. He's forcing you out of the property because he or she is failing to maintain even a minimum living standard. Okay. And so the basis for constructive eviction, the elements of constructive eviction vary by state. The applicable laws vary by state. So it's very important that you, check your local rules, check your local state laws, speak with an attorney, if possible, in your area. I can give you a few general tips, though. If you run into this situation, number one, provide your landlord with notice of the problem as soon as it comes up. One of the principles, one of the elements in most states, certainly in Indiana, is that if you've got a problem that you expect the court to address, you have to have shown that you gave gave the landlord notice of that problem and gave them an opportunity to cure. That means you told them about it and you allowed them time to fix it. Okay, so if it's a significant problem, if it's mold remediation, if it's plumbing, something like that, could take a few days. Don't expect that that's going to be done in 4 hours, right? Same thing with a pest problem, anything like that. So you've got to provide them with notice, give them an opportunity to fix it. A second item that I would recommend is that you do everything in writing. If you've got a problem with your landlord, so often I run into prospective clients or people who are asking me questions who say, I've got this problem with this problem. I told the landlord, we had this conversation, and it was all over the phone. And that's a big problem when you get to court and the landlord's going to deny that you ever told him about it. Okay, so do everything as far as possible in writing. Many landlords today have a platform that they use where you can submit your repair request. Use that. If they don't have that, do it by text or email or another written form. You got to make sure that it's clear that you're notifying the landlord, that you're doing it in writing, that you can prove it, and that you've given them an opportunity to fix it. If you've done that, you've told them about the mold problem, the pest problem, the plumbing problem, the HVAC problem, whatever it may be, and they still haven't even lifted a finger. You're 2 weeks in, you're 30 days in. I would say the next step is to have a detailed conversation with the landlord. And again, I say conversation in writing. Map out the issues. Let them know that you're not happy with the way things are going. Let them know that you're considering, having to relocate as a result of their failure to fix these problems. Do it in writing. This will show if you have to go to court. Number one, this accomplishes a couple things. First of all, if landlords get a serious note like that, where they know that they're potentially facing litigation, they know that they're potentially facing a termination of a lease, usually that'll kick them into action most of the time. And hopefully you can get a resolution that way without going to court. Secondly, though, if you go to court, you always want to have an eye on the court. If you go to court, you want to be able to show the judge not only that you gave them notice and opportunity to cure, but you gave them notice that you were intending to terminate the lease if they didn't fix it. And you gave them every opportunity and you detailed things, right? One other thing, number three, in the midst of this, consider calling your local health department to come out, especially for issues like mold, pests, sanitary issues. Call the health department out there to do an inspection. Very often they'll write up a nice report with a lot of details. They'll cite the landlord if there are problems, give them a deadline to fix things. That'll spur the landlord into action. And worst case scenario, you can have that report in court as evidence of your efforts to try and resolve the issue. Last option, if nothing else works, you can take it to court, take your landlord to court, ask the judge to terminate your lease, ask the judge to award you damages, which could include relocation expenses, months of rent paid where you didn't have the full benefit of the unit, possible work, lost wages, things of that nature. So that's where you get into more specific state laws, examining your state laws, speaking with a local landlord-tenant attorney who might be able to help you with that. If you enjoyed this video, if you got any value out of it, please consider subscribing. Until then, see you at the next episode.